Did you hear the one about President Trump bombing the Love Boat in South America? Well, unfortunately, Captain Steubing and cruise director Julie McCoy got killed, but at least we stopped drugs from entering the country, whatever those drugs might have been. In this video, I'm going to talk about that issue of not bombing the Love Boat, but bombing boats in international waters for the purpose of the so-called pretextual purpose of stopping drugs from coming in the country. And I'm going to examine it from three different perspectives based on my background as a law enforcement officer, specifically a federal investigator for the Drug Enforcement Administration. Secondly, as a lawyer, defense and prosecution. And then finally, as a professor, as it relates to drug policy and the war on drugs. To begin with, is that let's pretend at first that this matter, these people were smuggling drugs, and they were in the United States off the coast of Florida, and the president decided to bomb them. That's going to be easily problematic on a variety of levels. And it's separately problematic if it's in international waters. But we'll start with this off the coast of Florida situation. Now, number one is when you conduct an investigation as a federal investigator with the DEA, what you do is that a lot of times investigation itself is passive, is that somebody comes in and suspects the matter that somebody is smuggling drugs, or somebody gets arrested and decides to roll over and give the information. But just merely getting information by itself is not where is the beginning and the end, is that that's the start. And for example, let's say that there's three bozos that are smuggling drugs, and what those drugs would be, marijuana or cocaine. Those are two areas in which I focused on when I was with the DEA, and in interdiction, preventing them, stopping them, arresting people, seizing illicit substances when they came over the border. And these were large-scale shipments. So what would be done is that we would get the information that three bozos are smuggling drugs into the country. Well, number one is, how are we getting that information? Is it from an informant? And what does that informant, how good is that informant? Do they have an axe to grind? You get names, and then you start investigating, and you see if these people you identify who the suspects are. You conduct surveillance. You talk to other people and other witnesses. You sometimes get search warrants. And search warrants are issued by bringing an affidavit, which is sworn testimony before a neutral judge. And neutral is important. And that judge decides if there is enough evidence before him or her to indicate that there's probable cause to believe that these individuals are committing these particular crimes, and that a search warrant would be able to locate evidence in regards to those crimes. So the standard is probable cause, which is a low standard. No one's convicted on probable cause. It's just merely, it's slightly above suspicion, reasonable suspicion. Probable cause is one step above that. So, but what people are convicted on in the United States on a daily basis is proof beyond a reasonable doubt, which is an extremely high, but not an insurmountable standard. It's not proof beyond all doubt. It's proof beyond a reasonable doubt. So after conducting all of this investigation, these investigations oftentimes take months, perhaps even a year, and they go down some wrong alleys and take some wrong turns. And there may come a time in which, we get word based on that investigation that they're shipping something else, and then those individuals are apprehended, and the evidence is seized, and they are brought before a court to be arraigned, to be formally charged with what they're being charged, to give them notice about what they're being charged with, the criminal offenses, and they then have the opportunity to obtain an attorney. And whether it be on their own or if they cannot afford one will be appointed for them. So that sounds an awful lot like Miranda. Well, it's this type of jurisprudence dates back for decades. if not centuries. So this, and then if the person contests the matter, then he goes to court with his attorney, and the government must prove each and every element beyond a reasonable doubt. So if, think of it like a recipe for apple pie, is that you have to have all the ingredients for it to work. And if you don't have all the ingredients or all the elements, then it will not. And so that's kind of like the standard that is used for people being convicted. But the thing is that in a court of law, your defense attorney gets to cross-examine the witnesses, and because the government puts on their witnesses and the defense can cross-examine. The defense does not have the burden of proving innocence. The government must prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. So, if you're a defense attorney, you could question, like I've been a defense attorney as well, and you can question the witnesses. So you say, John Smith, that you observed my client load 3 kilos of cocaine into the back of his pickup truck, or whatever it was. Is that right? Yes, that's what I said. He goes, now, is it also true that, and you saw this, you testify that you were 50 feet away when this occurred. Is that correct? Yes. Now, it is also true that you are legally blind. Now, the thing is that, of course, the government failed to bring that up, and so it's only through cross-examination can we find those things out. So all of a sudden, this credibility of this first witness is kind of destroyed. And that's the benefit, is that being able to confront the witnesses against you. It's a constitutional right that's afforded for everyone on American soil. So the thing is that, now, ultimately, that person may be acquitted, found not guilty, or they may be found guilty. And then after they're found guilty, then they have to come back into court after a particular period, after a pre-sentencing report is made. And sometimes these people are held at the jail, other times they're released pending sentencing. And then there's another opportunity, multiple opportunities, of course, for the defense to challenge, the sentence. So, and then ultimately the court imposes the sentence, whether it could be probation, it could be 5 years, 20 years, who knows what. And so everything has to be done properly. There's a lot of checks because mistakes can be made. Mistakes have been made in the criminal justice system. Now let's look at that in a different frame, is that here this was not domestic U.S., and here it was not an investigation from a civilian investigation agency, because, the military is used to repel forces, not to conduct civilian investigation. The Posse Comitatus Act relates to that. So now, instead of conducting an investigation, we hear reports from the president, a politician in his office, that, they were taking drugs, smuggling drugs in our country. And so we bombed them. And they were thousands of miles away from the United States. So, and you have to take our word for it. So these people never got their day in court. They never got the opportunity to confront the witnesses against them. If they were sentenced, there's not that many offenses out there that, sentence people to death for smuggling drugs. And so they are now being, so in that situation of bombing someone, that annihilates all protections. And it's, whereas it was not on American soil, it is now a crime against humanity. Because the principle is that how do we know these people even did this? How do we know that they were smuggling drugs? And we're supposed to take the government's word for it? Would that work here in the United States? No. So, how was this investigation conducted? Who conducted the investigation? We don't have any of this. And so what was going on here is essentially is murder, is killing people who are suspected of smuggling. Not that they were, but they're suspected of smuggling. And we're expected to take our government's word for it that this was what it was, right? Do you really believe politicians? I certainly don't. So the bottom line is this creates multiple humanitarian concerns, legal concerns, international law concerns. And it also, you've got a president here that is actually essentially declaring war on a population of individuals that are boats. And so what are we going to be, the world's policeman, for any violation? And the thing is, that's where it starts. Starts internationally, and then, well, why not do it here in the United States? Because you'll find people saying, they're smuggling drugs and they need to be bombed. How do you know they're smuggling drugs? Have they been found guilty? Have they been accused of crime? Have they had the opportunity to defend themselves? No, when you drop a big bad bomb on them, they don't get any of that. Now, those are my perspectives as a former law enforcement officer, as well as an attorney, but also from the perspective of a professor, is that this is just another version of the war on drugs. And when we're talking about the war on drugs, we're talking about the war on our own people, whether it's the people here or somewhere across the globe. Because what happens if you decide to go on the Love Boat, or if you decide to go to South America, and your president has, been bombing its citizens? Are you going to feel safe? What are they going to do to you? They're probably not going to resort to the same barbaric measures that this administration is, but at the same time, are you going to feel really safe going there? And the thing is that when a president acts without authority, beyond his authority, beyond violating for example, the War Powers Act or some other similar legislation, is that he is declaring war without congressional approval. And we have a separation of powers in the United States. We have three branches: legislative, executive, and judicial, and they are co-equal branches. So when a president takes over a party like he's doing now and telling the Republicans what to do, and the Republicans say, yes, sir, may I have another, you no longer have democracy. And, if these politicians are just saying that, well, we don't want to challenge the president because, he's going to hurt us, then you need to quit your job. But if you're doing that because you agree with all of these horrible actions, then you're just as bad as he is. So this may sound partisan, but, I've never seen anything like this in my life that's been going on with this presidency. So this idea about the war on drugs being used as an excuse, to kill people, we've used the war on drugs as an excuse to take away people's civil rights, and whatever is necessary, right, to have a war against our own people. So the war on, if drug abuse is a serious concern, but you don't solve that problem with military action. It's not a problem that we can arrest ourselves out of, and it's certainly not a problem we can bomb ourselves out of. So for a variety of reasons, this is dangerous. This is unlawful. And I thought it would be helpful if I could provide a perspective from three different points of view. So, next time you go on the Love Boat, perhaps you may want to get a liability waiver or some type of insurance policy just in case you get bombed. Until next time.